Welcome to the Landscape Leadership Podcast. My name is Chad Diller, and I'm your host. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Landscape Leadership, and I'm joined by our Senior Project Manager, Emmett Hughes.
Hey, everybody.
If you work at or own a lawn or landscape company, you are in the right place. This is where we share our candid thoughts about sales and marketing as it applies to companies just like yours. So thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to start talking about a topic called turning your green industry website into a selling machine. So who better to bring in on this discussion than Emmett, the website design machine. He oversees all the website projects here for our landscape leadership clients and has had a lot of experience with this over the years. So I really wanted to bring him in to give his insights. Now, we are going to have a lot of tips for you today. And at the end, I'm going to have a great resource that I'm going to offer up to you so you can continue down the path of creating a better website for your green industry company. Give you a little context first. So website projects are typically one of the first things that we do with our clients when we start working together. And here at Landscape Leadership, we're a little bit, maybe a lot different than some other agencies that you might have dealt with in the past or see them coining themselves green industry, digital marketing, website agencies. We really do focus on a smaller quantity and spend a lot more time on these websites, so a greater quality as well. There are a lot of other agencies in the industry that for them, it's very typical for them to design 25, 50, maybe even 100 websites in a year. And so they're only going so deep on that. And you'll understand what I mean as we get more into our discussion. The clients that we work with are typically somewhere between $2 million to $250 million in annual revenue. And so that might intimidate you first when you hear that, but the tips that we're going to give that apply mostly for those types of companies will also apply if your company's smaller than that as well. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So Emmett, let's talk about websites. Like I said, some of the things the clients get, the first work we do with them is website project. And I think there are some really common presenting problems that they typically see. So what are some of the things that might cue that website design off?
So one of the first things we look at is just the format of the website and how it appears on desktop, mobile, tablet, all those different device types. And what we find most of the time is it's an ancient format, right? So it's not mobile compliant. There's insecure connection, right? So it's vulnerable to data breaches, things like that. And all in all, just in a website that appears to just look old and a bit outdated. So that's one of the big ones.
Yeah. And I think even within that website, even if you straighten all those things out and had it on the right architecture, a lot of times we see the copywriting's bad. Sometimes company owners tell us this website doesn't have much on there, or what it says is pretty typical. And they also might have some complaints about the visual aspects of their website, like the videos and photos, different things they use. And I think performance is a big issue too. It just doesn't get enough local traffic, doesn't get enough leads. And that's some of those things that we see becoming the presenting problems. What are some big trends? So Emmett's worked here for 6 years, going on 6 years now.
Coming up on 6 years, yep.
And he also worked for digital marketing agency before this. So what you have some perspective is from a web design standpoint. So what are some things, especially in the last 2 years, that you've noticed how website design has changed?
I think one of the big things is we're at the tipping point for what types of devices folks are using to visit websites. In the past, it was primarily desktop, and it's been trending towards mobile for the past decade or so. And now we're at the point where it's almost a 50-50 split between mobile and desktop. Mobile first development is one of the big trends. Starting out development, thinking about how a website will perform on mobile, perform and look on mobile first, and then thinking about how it will appear on desktop. That's not to say that desktop is less important now. It's just that first look, that first impression, that's more times than not going to be on a mobile device. So one of the other ones is less templates and more modules. And this really provides us and the company we're working with a lot of flexibility in terms of what the website pages actually look like. For a very long time, when we were designing a website, we would build out templates for a homepage and templates for a landing page, templates for service pages. And now we're more working towards creating really powerful modules that can be used to build any page throughout your entire website. So that's just created a lot of flexibility in terms of what we're actually creating and what we're actually coding.
Can you give an example? So a template, like your homepage is one template, maybe an inner page is another template, maybe your careers page is a different template. And then these modules are little pieces that make that up. Can you give an example of what a module would be?
Yeah, so it'd be like a pricing chart, right? A comparison chart for different prices for lawn care programs. Creating that as a module so that we have the power to add that to whatever page we want it on, and make changes right there within the CMS. So it's created a lot of flexibility in our job and what we do.
Yeah. Emmett said CMS is content management system. And the way that websites predominantly used to work is you would get a website developer to code this. So every time you wanted to do something drastically different with a page, you had to go back to the developer. And this allows us as an agency less time to create something new. And if a company ends up taking this over eventually and having an in-house marketing team, they feasibly could take these modules and build different page types because the pieces are already there and it's just a matter of dropping and dragging them, which is really cool. Yeah. And another big change I think that we've seen, because we're getting more and more into these projects, is e-commerce. There was a statistic that we talked about in an earlier podcast. Buyers now prefer a seller-free experience. Like 50 to 75% of people don't want to deal with a salesperson, depending upon their age. So what are some things that you see from a website design standpoint that we're doing to address that trend in consumer behavior?
Yeah, with e-commerce, we've seen an increase in the amount of clients asking us to build out custom calculators, transactional pages where you can purchase lawn care online and actually measure out your square footage and get a pretty decent estimate of how much the customer is going to be paying for the service. And people have come to expect this, to your point, Chad. It's not a matter of if you should put pricing on your website, you should.
Yeah, so e-commerce is a big thing as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the process now. Let's get down into the nitty gritty of this, because one of the things that comes up on the first call that I have with a potential client is if they have to do a website, how long is it going to take? So let's talk a little bit about the timeline and the different sections of that and what that all entails.
Usually we like to try and have a project range anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks from the kickoff call to all of our post-launch auditing. This time frame could differ at other agencies, but our window is 16 to 20 weeks. You have to keep in mind throughout that window, there are certain benchmarks that we have to hit and timelines that we have to hit in order to stay on track for that 20-week kickoff. So you can imagine when one timeline is missed, it has a snowball effect and things can fall off the rails. But we track all of that, and we've been getting better and better as an agency of staying ahead of things that could potentially derail website projects.
Yeah, and that's for any people that are involved with the website project. Yeah, there are some things from a development standpoint, things sometimes take a little longer than what you originally planned. But this is where clients really drive that 16 to 20 weeks, and they could make it 40 weeks if they wanted to. I've talked to prospective clients before that have been undergoing a project for 8, 9 months. And I often wonder, is that because of you or is it because your agency or a combination of both? And sometimes that just one delay, 2 weeks, that just keeps adding another delay of 2 weeks. And before you're a month out of scope.
Sure.
What would you say? Because I know that people are listening to us right now and they're saying, oh my word. So you're saying like 4 months to build a website? That seems like a long period of time. So if someone's getting a quote from a marketing agency to rebuild their website and it's less than 3 to 5 months, what are some things that could potentially be missing in that process?
There could be a process missing in the process.
True.
To be blatantly honest with you. But one of the things that could be missing is well-written content. A lot of times when we undertake a website redesign, we look at everything and we do an analysis of all of the content, have it rewritten when necessary. And if you're doing something with a really quick turnaround, you're probably not going to be looking through each piece of content with a fine-tooth comb. So that's potentially something that could trip you up there. And another thing that goes hand in hand with that is the SEO. And has analysis been done on the current state of the SEO for that website and what's being done to improve it? So I don't know if there's a lot of time in less than a 4-month period to do those two things, in addition to all the other design aspects that need to be done.
I think a lot of times I talk to prospective clients, one of the things that they were asked to do in the past when they got their website redone was to write the content. The actual developer didn't even do anything. They just said, here's a page. I need you to write me 3 paragraphs about this. And
Right.
so they wrote it, and they might not be a skilled writer, or they might not know how to write it for SEO and humans at the same time. So that's
Sure.
a big thing. So they end up with a website that visually looks nice, but it's missing some big critical elements. What are some other things that could be missing for a really short project like that?
Honestly, just doing an audit when everything's done, auditing and testing, and just taking a look at the website with unbiased eyes. So maybe you send it out to some colleagues, right, who can take a look with a fresh set of eyes and say, hey, this doesn't make sense from just a functionality standpoint or a flow standpoint. So to get that kind of feedback is a very important part of the process. It takes a good bit of time at the end for us to go through our checklist and just make sure everything's in good shape. And then another thing is, if you're getting a website and the time frame is very small and maybe the budget's very small, you're probably looking at someone who's just going to give you a template from some marketplace somewhere, as opposed to a custom solution for your business. I'm not here to tell you that templates don't have a place in the web design world. It's just something that is commonly used on a shorter time frame and with a lower budget. And then one of the other ones is, it goes back to those checks and balances throughout the whole website design process. Is if you're an internal marketing person at a landscape company or any company really, and you haven't already received feedback from the folks that you're reporting to, be it the CEO, the owner, if those check-ins are missed and you go to them in their office one day and say, hey boss, the new website's ready to go. I'm ready to push it live. Do you want to take a look? And they're seeing it for the first time. There's a 50-50 chance that they don't like what they see and you're back to the drawing board. So again, some of those things you have to bake into the timeline, because you don't want to get to the point where you're putting the cart before the horse, because that's not a good place to be.
Yeah. And you have a really good process of how you tackle these website projects to involve multiple team members, and you break it up into some nice stages to progress through. So why don't you talk a little bit about what the steps are from start to finish in a website redesign that people should be going through?
So the first thing we do in stage 1 is onboarding. We like to have the whole team on a call and just set up the stage for the process, get some of the design elements that you're interested in, figure out what you dislike about your current website, because we don't want to replicate that anywhere on the new site, obviously. So it's really just a good starting jumping off point. So stage 2, that's design and development, where a designer puts together a visual mock-up of what the site will look like, and we'll ask for a lot of feedback. There's a lot of interaction during this stage to get things right on paper, on a visual aspect. There's a lot of importance in getting this stage right in the design, because once we start bringing that design into code, we don't want to have to backtrack and start recoding things, because that's when we talk about that snowball effect for not hitting timelines. That's where it can really come back to bite you. So once everything's nailed down in terms of the design and our development team is coding and has everything laid out in code, we go into the staging stage. And that's where we'll go and take all of the content that's been written, all of the SEO attributes, all the images and videos, and actually place them into the website and get it ready, much like how you would stage a home that you're getting ready to sell. And then from there, we'll go to a soft launch, and then what we like to call the post-launch, where we go through our list of checks and balances to make sure everything's working the way that it should.
We, as a team, we have 2 or 3 people that go through a finished published website and just try to find stuff that doesn't work. Things, buttons that you click, links that aren't going somewhere, something that looks weird on a certain type of device. We're going through it with a fine tooth comb. In fact, Emmett, I drive him nuts with that sometimes, but we appreciate the level of detail at the end. And I think our clients like that too.
I was just going to add, throughout this entire process, we've created a budget and created a scope for the entire thing. But sometimes great ideas are born from the back and forth between clients. But unfortunately, some of those things aren't necessarily in the beginning budget. So we like to take those ideas throughout the project that come to mind and add them to something we call the parking lot, which are just honestly a list of brainstormed ideas that we can come back to at a future date and continue to build upon that don't fit into the original scope.
So you talk about costs. I think that's a big question. Probably
Yeah.
viewers and listeners probably had it the whole way from the beginning and wanted
Timeline
that.
and cost.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think is a reasonable expectation for a budget of a quality website?
Just right off the bat, you're looking at anywhere from 16 to 25,000. Obviously, that range could be pushed by a lot of different things. If you're looking for some different calculators and special features on your website that are more than just your standard web page, that can add some onto that higher range. But a lot of things go into it, including how long it's going to take to stage and how much copy is going to need to be written. There are a lot of different variables, but if you want it done the right way and really tick all the boxes, that's the range that you're looking at.
I think a lot of times people will hear that price tag and especially smaller companies are like, that's crazy. I can't afford that. And a lot of times in those scenarios, those websites that they currently have or that they're thinking about building might have 5 or 10 pages. And that's it. In fact, I've seen a lot of one-page websites. So while that might be good for a virtual brochure, it's not going to do much to get found in search results or to generate a ton of leads. And if you're hearing this and you're like, wow, that's a lot. You could start at this place, but with time, you could progress to a more sophisticated, time-focused website to build something like that, custom work. When you get a website redesigned, we've been working with a lot of clients. Some of them it's second, third year, but we have some that are like 6, 7, 8 years down the road now. How often does a company need to rebuild their website?
That's a great question. I think the 3 to 5 year range is when we really like to take a hard look at a website and just go through it and make sure it's still up to the standards that we like to see and it's still up to date. One of the surefire ways that we know it's time is when we're making changes or there are change requests coming in that cost more over the course of 2 to 3 years than it would to just have your website redesigned. That kind of puts off a red flag in our heads that say, hey, it might be time here to just go back to the drawing board. Or if there's significant things that have changed with layout and architecture, software behind the website, such as HubSpot or WordPress that need to be updated, it's probably a good time to start thinking about going back to that brainstorming session and bringing it up to speed with where the industry is going.
I think it's the same if you think about anything investment that you might make for your lawn and landscape company, a piece of equipment, a vehicle. These things are purchased to perform a job. And at some point in time, they become more expensive to maintain than they are to replace. And sometimes they can't do certain things that you need them to do, or they just make you look really old. And it's hard to say exactly when that happens with web design because there are trends that we probably don't even know about that might happen 2 years from now. And that will make certain websites start to look a little bit more dated or function differently.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thanks, Emmett. I appreciate your help with this discussion today. A new website alone may not fix all your problems. Just having that new website, you might need things in the website to really help it to be powerful. That might mean you need to hire a photographer or a videographer. It might mean that you need to write more and more great content on your website. You might need to enlist the help of a marketing agency to start doing some advertising campaigns to drive traffic to your website or continually work on your search engine optimization. And just because you get a new website doesn't mean things are done. As Emmett alluded to a little bit here today, there is testing and refinement and future improvements that you should be making. Now, I'm going to direct you to some additional resources that I mentioned at the beginning. We have a resource that you can go on and download. It's called 25 Website Must-Haves for Driving Traffic, Leads, and Sales. And there's also 60 plus blog articles, videos, and prior podcast episodes about web development if you really want to learn more. So look in the description below. You will see links to that content. If you've found this podcast to be helpful, I invite you to continue your research on our website, or you can reach out to us directly or on LinkedIn. Also, if you like this episode, feel free to share it with one of your teammates or an industry peer. Subscribe to either our blog or the podcast, wherever you're hearing this, or on YouTube as well. I hope now that you have a deeper understanding of what it takes to create a valuable website and what that design process looks like. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a really great day.